Chapter 11. At the farm, Peg wouldn't leave her mother's side, even though Danny pulled her away, whispering into her ear, "Leave Ma and Alfred be." "No," Peg said stubbornly. "I want to stay with Ma." "At least keep quiet and let Ma and Alfred talk to each other," Danny insisted. Peg simply jerked out of his grasp and ran to hang on to Ma's hand. Danny went back to the house. As he walked into the kitchen, Melba was saying to Gussie, "She's pleasant enough, I guess, but hardly the type I'd expect Alfred to like." "Why shouldn't he like her?" Gussie said. "I do. She's friendly and down home and a beauty." Melba carried a tray into the dining room. "I hardly say that. She's a little thin for most men's tastes, I would think." Gussie suddenly spotted Danny. "Well, Danny, I like your ma." "Thanks," Danny answered. Melba returned to the kitchen, her cheeks pink with embarrassment, and the empty tray at her side. She didn't acknowledge Danny as she began loading the trays again with platters of sliced bread and meats. "Gussie, we need to set another place at the table," Melba said. You set one short." Gussie counted our fingers, shook her head. "There's a place for everybody." "Well, I've asked Annie Pratka." "I've asked Annie Pratka to join us for dinner," Gussie said. "Mrs. Pratka," Danny blurted out. "Why?" "She's a near neighbor and a good friend," Melba said. "Your mother will want to meet the neighbors, won't she?" "I guess," Danny muttered, not knowing what else to say. He wandered into the parlor and kicked at the footstool. Mrs. Pratka would probably be her usual bossy self, and Danny didn't want anything to hurt Ma's good impression of Alfred in his home. Aunt Melba, with her sighs and resigned looks, was bad enough. Ma came in glowing, her cheeks pink, her eyes sparkling. A few strands of her hair came loose, and she tucked them into the bun at her neck. "The land's beautiful. There's a cluster of young birch trees off to the south that could well be a fairy ring if they were in the right place." "What's fairy ring?" Gussie asked. "It's part of Irish magic," Ma said. "Ma tells the best stories," Peg said. "I like the scary ones, like about the pukas who change shape in the night and thunder down the dark roads." Gussie leaned forward eagerly. "I love a good story." You'll hear 'em all," Ma promised. Alfred had come in behind Ma, and Danny was aware that he was intently studying her. He doesn't understand her, Danny thought. Was there something else I should have told him? Something I left out? The kitchen door suddenly burst open, and Annie Pratka sailed into the room. In her hands was a large, fragrant mince pie. She stopped and stared at Ma. Danny was surprised to see that look in Mrs. Pratka's eyes. It was exactly like the look in Wilmer's eyes when he and Danny first met, and he was sizing up Danny for a fist fight. Melba stepped forward and hugged Mrs. Pratka with one arm, taking the pie from her with the other hand. "Dear Annie," she said, "let me introduce you to the children's mother, Mrs. Kelly. Alfred, don't just stand here. Help Annie off with her wrap. Mrs. Kelly, has long been Annie and Alfred and Olga's dearest friend." Ma was taller than Aunt Melba and Mrs. Pratka. As she looked down at them, she held out a hand to each. "Annie, it's my great pleasure to meet such a good friend," she said. "And Melba, how kind you've been to Alfred and the children, too. Alfred hasn't had to tell me all that you've done. I can see it." "Oh, well, my goodness," Melba murmured, suddenly flustered. "I hope you'll both be my friends, too," Ma said. "Please call me Noreen." Gussie turned to the stove. "Dinner's ready whenever you are," she said cheerfully. "Gussie," Melba mumbled, her lips thin with irritation. "It's my place to invite guests to dinner, not yours. What will Mrs. Kelly think?" Noreen laughed and winked at Gussie. "I'm thinking that all smells so good I can't wait to eat it." Danny trailed to the rear as they filed into the dining room. Gussie stopped him by grasping his shoulder. "Watch out for Miss Pratka," she said. "She hasn't given up yet." Didn't take Danny to realize what Gussie was right. Mrs. Pratka immediately steered the conversation to cooking, and Ma admitted that she probably couldn't hold a candle to Annie as a cook. "Cook where I worked taught me how to make many dishes," Ma said. "But when I lived with my family, we often didn't have much to eat. We relied mostly on potatoes and cabbage. They were filling." Melba raised her eyebrows, and Mrs. Pratka looked smugly satisfied. Conversation during the rest of the meal went just as badly. Alfred didn't speak, but toyed miserably with his food. Mrs. Pratka continually alluded to Ma's lack of experience in running a prosperous farm, comparing her own to abundant skills. Danny winced at once when she quoted the late Tyrus Pratka's remark that she should have won a gold medal for her cooking. Ma kept her pace, simply agreeing with everything, until Miss Pratka glanced at Danny and Peg and said, "You have such lovely children. How could you bear to give them away?" Ma put her fork down and leaned across the table toward Mrs. Pratka. Her eyes glared with tears and anger. "I couldn't bear to. It was the most painful thing I've ever had to do in my entire life, more painful even than losing the husband I loved with all my heart. Each day we were apart I missed my children more than the day before. I have many faults," Mrs. Pratka, Ma added, "and one is that I am a proud woman. Yeah, I would choose any humiliation, any hurt, in order to be with my children again." She straightened, sitting tall, shoulders back and chin held high, and her words spaced with determination. "We'll never speak of this again. I hope you understand me." Mrs. Pratka refused to bend. "I think we understand each other, Mrs. Kelly." For a few moments Gussie carried the dishes to the table and brought in Mrs. Pratka's mince pie, which she cut into generous pieces. "I'll serve," Mrs. Pratka said proudly, and reached for the pie, serving wedge and the plates while Gussie handed forks around. "Guests first, family last," Mrs. Pratka said pointedly, and she dished a piece of the pie on the plate. "For you, Mrs. Kelly." Ma passed the piece to Melba. No, thank you, none for me, she said. And he flushed. I made it for you. She quickly glanced at Alfred. That is, for Alfred, and for you too. At least try a small piece. The thin smile she gave Ma made Danny shiver. You could use a little meat on your bones. Ma smiled back. You seem to have more than enough to spare. She paused. I'm speaking of the pie, of course. She accepted the small wedge of pie Mrs. Pratt could cut for her, took only a tiny taste, and turned to Alfred with a series of questions about the town of St. Joseph. Danny was relieved when dinner was over, but horrified when Ma said, I'd better get busy and pack the children's things. Ma, Dan cried, we live here now. Well, I'll be staying with Mrs. Banks for a while, Ma said. I just thought you and Peg would want to be with me. I do, Peg piped up. You're taking the children? Alfred looked astonished. But they're used to being here, and they have school to go to. Danny stood close to Alfred. I can't go with you, Ma. My father needs me. As Ma's eye widened with surprise, he quickly added, and the wedding will be soon, won't it? And then you'll come here to live. Danny wondered if the others had seen Ma flinch. When she spoke, her voice was so strong he decided he must have imagined it. It wouldn't be right not to give Alfred the opportunity to get to know me, Ma said. His offer of marriage was a kind one, but he should go into marriage sure that it's what he really wants. Quietly she added, what we both really want. Come on, Ma, Peg said, tugging on Ma's hand. I'll show you my room. We can pack my things. Danny took a deep breath and looked at his mother squarely, hoping she'd understand. Take Peg if you want, but I'm going to stay here. Ma's smile was loving as she tousled his hair. I understand, Danny. I love you very much, and I'm proud of you. As Ma ran up the stairs with Peg, Melba sucked in her breath and let out a hiss. Well, I never, she said. I do believe that Mrs. Kelly actually wants to be courted. It's not what she said, Aunt Melba, Danny protested. Alfred nodded as though Melba had spoken wisely. Thank you for your advice, Melba, he said. If that's what is on Noreen's mind, then I'll know how to proceed. Melba let out a little gasp, and Mrs. Pratt clutched her elbow and propelled her out of the room, saying loudly, let's see if we can lend a hand to Gussie. But Danny heard her whisper, and we need to talk. Then they drove Ma and Peg to Catherine's house. Not only Catherine was waiting for them, but John Murphy was too. This is a rare coincidence, he says. He jumped down to his feet and smiled broadly at Ma. I just stopped for a few minutes to discuss with Mrs. Banks a change of feed for a horse. Then he saw Mr. Murphy had scrubbed so hard his skin was still red and his high collar of his shirt was stiff with starch. Some coincidence. Danny scowled at him and said, You're a blacksmith. What would you have to do with feeding Mrs. Banks' horse? Danny, don't be rude, Ma warned. But Mr. Murphy extended a hand and a smile to Danny. The lad was not being rude, just curious, he said, to answer Danny's question. I'm not just a blacksmith. I have half interest in the livery stable as well. Mr. Murphy looked at Ma, which could provide a comfortable living for a small family. Peg asked, Do you help take care of the horses? Do you let your children ride them? I have no children, he said. Never have been married. Danny wished Mr. Murphy wouldn't keep staring at Ma. Ma came to St. Joseph to get married to our father, he said. Ma blushed. Foster father, she said, and you needn't explain, Danny. John heard the entire story while we rode together on the train. John, Danny still felt warm and comfortable when he had heard Ma call Alfred by his given name, but he didn't want her to be friendly with Mr. Murphy, too. I have a cat named Whiskers, Peg said to Mr. Murphy. I want to bring him, but he hid and he wouldn't come. You'll see him soon, Peg. When you and Ma, Danny began. Here, Peg, take off your coat, Ma interrupted. Catherine waved a hand toward the overstuffed chairs and the sofa. Everyone sit down. Who would like a cup of coffee or hot apple cider? She grinned at Peg. And who would like to help eat a pan of shortbread I made? Can I have a piece now? Peg asked. Surely. Come and see me put some on the plate. Some currant cakes, too. We'll let you pass them around. As Catherine and Peg left the room, Mom removed her hat and coat, and before Danny knew what happened, Mr. Murphy had steered her to a place next to him on the sofa. Alfred sat down the chair across from them. Something was going wrong with this plan, and Danny didn't like it at all.